Hello, my name is Bryan Vrailas, and this is my presentation of how and why people should harness their power from thermal energy. So what is thermal energy? You can kind of sense thermal energy by feeling like anything warm, say like a hot computer or just the side of your arm. What this is it's molecules and atoms that are vibrating, and you actually feel them because certain parts are vibrating more than others. So anytime you feel this effect of like hot or cold, there's still some thermal energy there because everything pretty much has temperature. So another thing about thermal energy is it involves the rule of thermodynamics. So whenever things have heat, a lot of times it'll transfer off this energy to other things, and that's a key component of thermal energy. Another aspect about thermal energy has to do with how living things all use energy. As things eat other things, they will produce some type of heat by breaking down the chemical energy. And this chemical energy breaking down just gives off heat naturally because it's part of a reaction. And so this reaction creates heat. So there's a lot of tools that can be used to generate heat. One of the most common is what is called TEGs, which stand for thermoelectric generators. Now these can be used by using like pressure with temperature gradients. Say you have a really hot item and a really cold item, that heat is going to want to follow the cold item. So you can use this way to turn this into electric energy by transferring this around. So one of the things that can be used for these power generators is what are called EMFs in cars, and this is becoming a really new form of cars where they're not just using gas or electricity, but they're actually turning some of this leftover energy into things to be used for transportation, which is coming really handy to use. So there's also a key component about how heat energy is used, and that has to do with machines. And any machine that does anything, whether if it is kinetic movement or it does like simple processing, it has to use up heat because it's a machine. And one of the rules of thermodynamics has to do with any machine that does work has to produce some type of heat. So it's really valuable to be able to capture this, as if you're able to take the heat from the machines, you're able to make a more efficient machine. And the more efficient a machine is, the less power you will have to use. So it's really important to figure out a way to make a machine more efficient. Another big issue that heat energy has is that it has a lot of free energy, and a lot of this energy is actually waste. So because this energy is free out in the air, it can't be used. And that's something that we want to be able to try to get, because the more energy we can use, the less we have to rely on fossil fuels and nuclear fuels and all these other like wasteful products. So by creating these more efficient machines, it would be extremely beneficial for doing like electricity prices and all these other electric problems that we could have. So another thing I want to talk about is the value of using heat. So there's also, to generate heat, you're not using anything with fossil fuels. So you also get a small bit of tax write-off, which is pretty nifty. Another thing is by like certain generators can use thermal energy from the mantle of the Earth, and so they actually have a almost unlimited supply of heat from there, because there's just so much lava down in the mantle that you pretty much could use this without ever running out. It would probably be, for the sun eats the Earth more than we're probably going to run out of the heat energy from the bottom of the Earth. So it's definitely a source that we could use for an extremely unimaginable amount of time. So it's definitely a resource that we could totally take advantage of. But like I was saying, there is the downside of with entropy. And entropy has to do with just randomness and it's what kind of known as like unusable or random energy. And what this kind of means is whenever you have random moving molecules that are in the universe, to say that, and the more chaotic or more like atoms you have them more random, they're not together, you make them more organized. Now this is really, really bad because you make the universe more chaotic. And you really want to make the world more controlled, because the more controlled you have this energy, the more available this energy is to use. So it's really, really important to kind of contain this energy, so that way everyone can use it equally. So that way there is no higher or lower demand of this energy. So it's really valuable to use this. Now, there are some problems with thermal energy that has to be worked out, that once these things get worked out, it would be widely more available to use, which is extremely important to do. If you could figure out how to solve these problems, then there would pretty much be no downsides to figuring out what's wrong with thermal generators. So one of the things that these generators use is they actually use a type of gas. So whenever they put the rod into the mantle and they use the heat, the gas that is used to help with these processes is really dangerous to breathe in. So a lot of workers that work in this environment have to wear like these serious special equipment, which to prevent them breathing in, because if they breathe in this gas, it can be very, very dangerous. And this gas has also been linked to being a really, really bad environmental factor. So because this gas is being released, it is going out into like neighborhoods. So it's severely increasing the temperatures of a neighborhood, which is very bad in itself. But also, many scientists think that this type of gas that's released in the atmosphere could actually worsen global warming. And the whole idea of using thermal energy is that way you have to use less fossil fuels. And by using less fossil fuels, you will be taking out the aspects of global warming, but in turn, this could actually be doing more harm than good. So this is a serious problem that they need to fix with huge generators like this. Another thing has to do with is the water that's released. So this water that comes out of these pipes are scorching hot, and so a lot of times there'll be a river and runoff to use. So they'll heat up water and they'll turn some items, make electricity, but there's still this boiling hot water that got leached in the water. And if a river has these like scorching hot water that's coming out, there's not enough like cool water to go with that water to make it usable. So whenever this hot water goes in these streams, it kills a whole lot of environments that are in these streams, which is really, really bad for the ecosystem, because other birds eat the fish in the water, and then certain certain animals eat the birds, and it would just damage the environment. So there has to be a safer way to use this, so that way it can be used more everywhere. By harnessing these abilities and getting these worked out, there will be a lot more sources of energy that would be used, which is really, really detrimental to using this thermal energy. So another thing has to do with some thermal places rely on nuclear fuels or fossil fuels. Say, for instance, nuclear fuels release a crazy amount of heat. And so some thermal generators will actually use this heat off of these machines to use their energy. So the purpose of using a thermal electric generator is so that way you don't have to use dangerous things like nuclear fuel. So that's like one of the things that has to be worked out. Another thing has to do with fossil fuel. Fossil fuel, same thing. It's a non-renewable source that we're using to heat up things, so that way we can make energy from it, which is just not a smart idea. Now you may be wondering, why is this like this? And a big part of it has to do with taxes with non-renewable sources. For instance, water and electric has to use gets a good like 30 to 40% tax write-off in certain states, and thermal energy has to use 10%. And the reason why this is because there's a whole lot of downsides to using thermal energy, like the reason I just listed. But if you were able to create, just by the clean thermal energy that's being used, you can cut out carbon dioxide emissions by like 60,000 cars is equivalent to taking it out. It also generates like a good like 12 to 20 like mega, like huge just chunks of like electric power. I think it's called mega gigawatts, I believe. It just takes up these huge amounts of energy. So it's really important to like use clean thermal energy rather than just using dangerous non-renewable sources to heat up thermal energy. Because the whole point of thermal energy is to have a clean and reusable resource that we won't have to run out with. In an ideal world, you would want to use thermal electric generators on like simple things, but to be able to do this, you have to make the product a lot cheaper. And that's one of the issues with thermal electric generators. They're very expensive, and they take years to make. So that's one of the things that needs to be fixed, is these problems. So what I like to finish off with by saying that by creating these generators, there would be a lot less demand for nuclear fuels, which would also help the environment. In addition, it would also be a whole lot cleaner to use because you'll have just a safer fuel source to use them. And another thing is, we are worried that fossil fuels are running out. So by using thermal generators, there will always be reactions that produce heat. So there will always be an available type of energy to use, since every machine gives us heat. As long as you have some type of electricity or electric or some current, then you could harness it. And so the whole goal is to get to about 100% electricity. And once we do that, you'll have almost an unlimited supply of energy. So that is my presentation of how and why we should use thermal electric generators. All right, thank you.